Hello everyone, my name is Nikhil and today I'll be talking about Ansible Navigator. So let's get started. What is Ansible Navigator? Uh, Ansible Navigator is a top level platform interface for automation creators. It's a Python application which provides a more cohesive, consistent, and predictable automation content creation experience. So, as the content is being created, um, the users or the automation creators can validate their content with some easy subcommands which Ansible Navigator provides. And then these subcommands interact directly with their execution environments as well. This method of execution will provide direct feedback to the users and in a clear and text-based user interface. So Ansible Navigator has a TUI. Um, the users will also be able to copy the objects from within the user interface to use in other content that they would create. So basically, you'll be able to copy the say for example the examples that are provided in Ansible doc for a particular module directly into your playbooks using Ansible Navigator, and we will see that in the demo as well. And in the previous video, which I think has been linked in the description of this video, we saw how you can use Ansible Builder to create execution environments, right? So Ansible Navigator is an extension to it, and Ansible Navigator makes it easier for you to use those execution environments and run your playbooks. Like I mentioned, Ansible Navigator is a top-level platform interface for automation creators. That also means that you don't need to use the Ansible dash commands, right? So like Ansible Playbook, Ansible Doc, Ansible Inventory, etc., etc. You can just use Ansible Navigator to do all those things which those Ansible dash commands were using, which is why you see on the slide bye bye Ansible Playbook and hello Ansible Navigator. So uh, so before we dive into more on Ansible Navigator and we look at the demos, let's kind of back off. So why do you need what do you need uh, to run a playbook, right? I think we all know this, but this is good to know when you are actually talk to automation creators. Is that when you write a playbook, you have a lot of things that it requires, right? It has a lot of dependencies like system requirements, maybe Bodo 3 if you are running on Amazon or if you are automating Amazon. Uh, then you have collections, and these can be a number of collections based on what you're automating, a specific version of Ansible core, and then there's Python itself, of course, right? So all of these things are a lot of variables, and to make sure when an Ansible playbook writer is actually writing to automate something, that automation or that automator needs to think about this front and center in order to make sure that this is going to work in the production environment, right? And that is where the real problem is, right? So when people start developing their automation on their laptop, that could be completely different environment than what's on the server itself or on the AWS, right? So a playbook writer may have Python 3, some version of Ansible core, which is the latest and greatest on their local environment, on their workstation or laptop. But the AWS may be something much older, right? Which is much more stable in terms of Ansible core. So this experience is difficult because the user or the enterprise developer really is kind of stuck, right? They are still stuck in this. I am writing for the community where I want to write, but the end goal is to write to run it on AWS, right? So this is a very difficult experience, and this is where we are trying to solve for as well, and this is where Ansible Navigator comes in. Also, one more important thing here is that when we start containerizing for the future or for the execution environment, it is very hard for end users to run the Ansible dash commands, right? Ansible dash commands aren't easily exposed to the end user because since they are in a container, you have to actually interface with the container first and then the container can run whatever is on the box. So if you don't have Ansible Navigator, you would actually have to run your own custom Ansible runner or podman or Docker commands, right? So what we are trying to do is have Ansible Navigator be the seamless environment for people who are used to using the CLI like you do today using Ansible dash commands for and also for tomorrow's use case of execution environments. So this is I just wanted to give you an idea of what is Ansible Navigator and why it is being used, and this is just a small summary of that. So now let's go to a demo. So let me bring my PyCharm. So this is my terminal on the bottom, and on the left hand side you see certain files which I'll be using in this demo. Um, so first of all, to install Ansible Navigator you can just use pip. So I've already installed it. So if I just do pip list Ansible Navigator, it will show me that I've installed the latest version of Ansible Navigator, which is 2.1.0. If you want to install it, you can just do pip install Ansible Navigator, and this will install Ansible Navigator for you. So the binary that or the command that you would run for Ansible Navigator is just Ansible-Navigator, and if you click enter, this by default will open this TUI, which is the text-based user interface. And over here you would see it has certain set of sub commands that you can run um, um, while using Ansible Navigator. We'll see them one by one, maybe not all of them, but most of them we'll see. So the first one that I want to talk about is the settings one. Um, uh, so on this is a folder that I've got locally, and over here you see ansible-navigator.yaml. This is the settings file that I'm using. Uh, you can define this settings file either in the project which you are using to run the Ansible Navigator commands, or you could define it using an environment variable. Um, it's pretty similar to what you would do for Ansible config. Um, uh, it's just that name of the file is ansible-navigator.yaml or .json. So in this file, you would see there are certain uh, configuration parameters that I've defined over here. Um, these are just few of them. There are a lot of them that you could define. And in fact, if you say for example, you come here and you do edit, you want to put up. So for example, I've already put the editor command, and my editor is the charm, which is PyCharm I'm using. Say you don't had this playbook artifacts, right? Let's remove this for now, right? And now if you come here and if you do this, it will give you autocomplete. So playbook artifact, and then you want to say what this playbook artifact has. So do you want to enable it? By default it is true, but you can make it true or false, whatever you want. So basically what I wanted to say was, this settings, when you do it in your editor, it will give you this auto completion as well. And there are a set of settings which you can find on the docs page of Ansible Navigator. I will talk about few of them, um, especially the ones that I've defined over here. While I'll be talking, while I'll be showing you the different subcommands of Ansible Navigator. Uh, so the editor one, like I said, right, this is the default editor which Ansible Navigator will use when you run certain commands, especially when you want to create a new playbook using Ansible Navigator. By default, if you don't give it editor, it is going to use VI, but if you do give it a editor, it will use the editor the way you defined it. Like for example, I'm using Charm, you could use Emacs or anything else that you are more comfortable with. Playbook artifacts. So when you run the Ansible playbook using Ansible Navigator, it creates a artifact file. Like here you would see it has created for the run that I had before, and this has all the output of your play. So this this is this is this is more of a JSON file containing all your job events or your output of your tasks. So by default it's enabled. If you put it as false, this artifact file will not get created. um, but like I mentioned, right, by default it's true. Execution environment, by default they are enabled, and there is a default image that is used by those uh, by by by, uh, by Ansible Navigator, but you can override that with this image property, and you can point to your own execution environment like I'm doing over here. um, so if I actually show you, let's actually look at the settings from here. So over here you would see these are all the Ansible Navigator settings which are available. So like I mentioned, right, the ones that I have overridden in this settings file, you would see over here that it shows as settings file here, right? So I have overwritten the editor, which is why it says that it's reading this editor command settings from this file that I have defined. So over here you see certain numbers as well, right? So I can actually type in that number. So say for example 11, and it will take me to the editor command, and it will show me more details about the same editor command option in the settings. So the current value is charm line, right? Charm, that's what I've defined over here, and the default value is user bin nano, right? So basically, this is just telling that I've overwritten the default value and this is my current value. If I press escape, it's again going to take me to the previous screen, which had all the settings options which are available for Ansible Navigator. Um, let's try to see execution environment as well, which is 15. So execution environment is the EE, whether you want to use the execution environment or not. The default value is true, like I said, and the current value is true as well, which is what I've defined here as well. If I make this false, and let's save this and let's go back here, and now again let's go back to 15. Oh, I think I should come out and then go back to the settings. So now let's go back to 15. Okay, so this still says it as true. I hope I saved the file. Yes, I did, which is okay. So let's run the Ansible Navigator settings again. And now let's go. So, okay, so I actually had to go back and run the Ansible Navigator settings again. And now it shows as false, right? So, so now if I go to 15, it will show you that the current value is false and the default value is true. And if I go to uh, the 16, which is the execution environment image, it will tell me that the current value is this, which is what I've defined in my settings file, and the default value is the creator EE. So if you don't give execution environment image and run your playbooks using Ansible Navigator, it is going to use this execution environment by default. Um, if you don't want to use execution environment, right, you want to just run the Ansible playbook locally, that's when you would make the execution environment enabled as false, and with this value it is not going to use the default execution environment, or if you have overwritten with your own execution environment. So this is where you would do local versus the execution environment by enabling or disabling the execution environment. Like I mentioned, by default it's true. So if unless you override this value with false, it is always going to use execution environment. So for now, let's keep it as false, and it will use the Ansible playbook locally, which I'll show you. So that is settings. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of other options available as well in this settings file, which you can find on the docs page of Ansible Navigator. So let's go back and let's go back to Ansible Navigator in the TUI. So we covered settings. Now let's look at the collections. So if I just say collections, by default, if I had this execution environment enabled as true, it will show me all the collections which are part of my execution environment, which is this execution environment, right? But since I've made it as false, it is showing me all the Ansible collections which are present locally on my file system, which is why you see this path, right? This is from my file system. So over here you would see the names of the collections which are present. There are about 104 of them. You can see the version, and you can also see whether they are shadowed or not. So uh, when I with this term shadowed, basically it tells you whether you have uh, a version of the same collection locally in your home directory as well. So like over here, this is my global user bin, user python site packages Ansible collection, but I've overwritten it with this home nix, which is my user, and I've put the collection there as well. So this version is getting overwritten with this latest version, which is available in my home directory. So it tells you whether you have a version, a different version of the same collection somewhere else, and if it's getting red, then that's when you would see this shadowed as true. So like I mentioned, right, this is on my file system because I had disabled the execution environment. But if I make it true and save this, and let's go back here, and oops, sorry, and let's go back to the Ansible Navigator and do collections. Now it will show me the collections which are part of this execution environment. So now it's only showing me two collections, right? Um, so this, if you remember, or if you've seen my previous video where we created this execution environment, I had installed Amazon AWS collection in it, and that's why you see it, that there's the version of the collection which is installed, um, and yeah, the other values. So if I had if I had not defined this whole execution environment section over here, it would by default have read the execution environment, but the default execution environment, not this image, right? It would have read the Ansible creator execution environment, and would have shown me all the collections which are part of that. So if you want to override that, you can do it via this settings file, and define your own execution environment. So that's now if I actually what I wanted to show was, this is listing the collections. Now if you actually you can go and get the details of the collections as well. So over here, if I just type 0, it's going to show me all the different modules or the lookup plugins or the inventory plugins or the callback, whatever is present in this Ansible collection. It will give me the list of that. And then in fact I can go, say I want to see more details about AWS AZ info. So I will press 1 and it will take me to this module page, and it will tell me, what is this module, what are how I can use it, and what are the different options available on this module. One really cool thing about Ansible Navigator is I can actually type um, examples over here, and it will show me the examples of this module. So if I press enter with examples, now it's showing me all the examples of how to use this module, whatever is available in the docs. And another cool thing is now I can type another command which is open, uh, and if I just say open it, what it will do is it will take these examples into a YAML file which will become my playbook. So now if I press enter, what it has done is it has created a temporary file with that example being pasted over here. So basically the content creation is now really simple. All you have to do is go to the example and just type in open, and it will open up a new YAML file which with the examples in there. So now all you have to do is maybe go and change the zone name to whatever zone name you want, right? So uh, you know like I said, creating content is now really simple using Ansible Navigator. I can go ahead and save this file, and this file will be saved. I can change the name of the file if I want to, right? And if you remember, I said there is a editor option in the Ansible Navigator settings, and that's why it opened up in the charm. If you define it any other editor over here, when you say open, it's going to open up in that navigator which you in that editor which you define over here. So this is a really cool feature of Ansible Navigator which I wanted to show. So let's go back. So this is about collections. Like I mentioned, right, you can list all the collections, and then you can go inside the collection and see what is there in that collection, and then you can use the examples and the open command to create your content easily using those collections. So now let's go back. So that was collections. uh, and now let's look at config. So basically config is very similar to what the Ansible config is. So this is just showing you all the Ansible configuration that I have in the ansible.cfg file. By default, it will read the default CFG file that I have on my system, and it will show me all the options that I could define in the Ansible CFG file, right? So there's nothing different. It's just that it is showing you all those configuration options of Ansible CFG in a very nice, text-based format. You can go and look at any of those values. So, I wanted to look at action warnings. It will tell me what is the default value. And what is the current value, and it's true. um, that's what the default value is. If I had defined a ansible.cfg over here and would have overwritten this value, you would see a different current value over here. So you can define ansible.cfg and put any of those Ansible configurations in there, and Ansible Navigator will read them and show them whatever you put in the ansible.cfg. So that is config um, doc. This is a really important one. So basically, if you are familiar with Ansible dash doc command, it is very similar to that. So you could do doc shell, right? And it will give you um, the all the details about the shell module, right? So if I just do doc shell here, it will tell me this is the shell module. These are all the different options available for that shell module, and what can be the values for them. So if you remember in collections, I did this examples thing, right? You could do similarly over here in the doc as well. And now it will take me to all the examples that I have for the shell modules in the docs, and then you can just do the similar thing of pull and open, and what this will do is it will create a YAML file with all these examples in there it is, right? So all you could do is just use whatever you want and delete rest of the things or edit rest of the things, and your playbook is there. So the content creation, like I have been mentioning, is really easy using Ansible Navigator. Um, in a traditional way, what you would do is, you would find these examples, maybe copy and then paste them into a YAML file and then edit them. You don't have to worry about that when you're using Ansible Navigator. All you have to do is find the examples and then just give a command open, and it will open up a new file with that example in there. So so that's doc command. It's very similar to Ansible doc. Whatever you are doing with Ansible doc, you can do exactly same thing with this doc command here in Ansible Navigator as well. So that brings us to the next command, which is images, and let's look at that. So when you say images, what it is going to do is it will give you the list of all the images which are present locally on your machine. So like here, it gives me a list of about 9 images that I have, and this is my execution environment which I have created using Ansible Builder. And you would see the what is the tag for all these images, whether these are execution environments or not. So for example, Ansible Builder is not an execution environment. It's an Ansible Builder image that I used to create the execution environments. And then it tells you when was it created and what is the size of the image. um, you can actually go in the image and get more details as well. So say for example, I want to go and see the details of my execution environment that I created, which is the number 8 over here. So if I just press 8, it gives me certain more options. So I can say 0 and it will give me the image information with all the information about image, when was it created, and some extra metadata about that image. I can also get the details of what are the Ansible versions and collections in this image. So if I press 2, it will tell me that it has Amazon AWS and the Ansible version is core 2.12. I can also look at all the Python packages which are present in this image. Since I have installed Amazon AWS, I'm assuming that it should have Proto packages. So if I just do 3, it tells me that these are all the packages, and of course it has Boto 3 as well. So like I mentioned, right, Ansible Navigator makes it really easy for you to navigate through the content that you have. um, um, Not only just the playbooks or the modules, but also your execution environment images, and etc. So this is the image part, and now let's look at the inventory, right? So over here you would see that I've created an inventory file. It's a very simple inventory file. I've got certain groups, and I've got few of the hosts in these groups. These are all dummy hosts. So if I do inventory and then -I inventory, uh, okay, I think I pressed the wrong. One second. Let me close this and open the terminal again. Sorry about that. So if I do Ansible Navigator inventory -I inventory, what this will do is it will give me two options, whether I want to browse the groups or I want to look at the host. So say I do groups, it will tell me what all groups do I have. So like I mentioned, right, I have dev, QA and prod. So it says dev, prod and QA, and this is a default group which is present in all the inventories, which is ungrouped. um, and it tells you the type of the group, the type, and it's a group. And then I can in fact go in each of those groups and look at the group vars and the host vars as well. So say for example I press 0, it gives me the list of all the hosts that are there in the group. And if I press 0 again, it gives me these are the host vars for this group. So Ansible connection is local and the inventory host name is dev1, of course. So you can actually browse your inventory easily via Ansible Navigator. You can look at your groups, group vars, host vars, and all the different things that you can have in your inventory. So that's the inventory um, command. You can also browse through your hosts. So if I just press 1, it will give me the list of all the hosts that I have, and I have about 15 of them over here, right? So like I mentioned, right, it's very easy. It's very similar to what you would do using Ansible inventory, command on the command line, but this gives you a nice text-based output over here. So that's Ansible Navigator inventory. Let's go back into Ansible Navigator and see what next do we have. Log. This is just the review of the log, the review of the application log. So over here you would see that it created this Ansible Navigator log file, right? And it gives me all the different errors that have happened or the warnings that have occurred while I was using Ansible Navigator. Sorry about that. So yeah, that's log. Um, Lint is basically, if you have used Ansible, Lint is more of, if whether the playbook that you have written follows certain rules and guidelines given by Ansible, you know, whether you are defining, whether you have the right, tabs and all those things, whether your, tasks are well indented or not. So you can use Lint to make sure the playbook that you're writing is correctly written in terms of indentation and all those things. Open, we have already used this command, right? When I was showing you examples, I just you know I just gave a open command and it created a new YAML file with all those examples in there, and that's what the open command is. We'll talk about replay after we do the run. So let's look at the run. This is the most, one of the most important subcommands of Ansible Navigator, I would say. So this is where you would run your playbooks, right? So over here, you would see I've got a test playbook, and I've got, 4 tasks, and it's just, printing message 1, message 2, message 3, message 4. So what I could do is I could say run, and I can give the, oh, sorry. So let's go back into run. So let's go back to Ansible Navigator and let's say run, and I can say test playbook dot YAML and hyphen I the inventory. So now what this will do is it will run the playbook and it will use that inventory that I have defined over here. So if I just press enter, now it will tell me that it has run the play. So I only had one play, right? Uh, it says it is okay on the 60 hosts, or for the 60 tasks it is okay. There are 0 tasks which have changed, 0 for unreachable, failed 0, skip 0, ignored 0, in progress 0, task count is 60, and the progress is complete. I can press 0 over here and it will give me the list of all the 60 tasks that it ran. And over here you can see what host did it run on, whether it was changed or not, what was the task name, what was the task action, and how long did it run. So it gives you nice, like I mentioned, a very clear and nice representation of the output that you would usually see. I can in fact go into each of those tasks as well. So if I press 0 over here, it will give me the detail of that specific task as well. So like when did it end, what was the playbook, and if I go down, it gives me a task path over here, like what was my task path. And this is a really cool thing as well. So now if I do, let's try this. I haven't tried this, but let's do that. So if I do over here, and if I say, let's see, open, uh, let's not give open, let's just try to give task path. So ideally what I'm trying to see is, if I just say task path, does it take me to the task of my playbook? So if I just do task path, okay, it gives me the value of the task path, which is not what I wanted. So I should say open task path. And now if you see, it took me to that specific task for which I was looking at the output. So it took me over here. Let's try to look at some other value as well similarly. So let's go page down. Let's go to 58, right? And over here you would see task path is this. So now if I say open task path and press enter, it takes me to the exact task that it ran. So like I mentioned, right, you could easily correspond your task to the output now, and you can see what was my task which had this output, right? uh, this makes your life much easier than your instead of going to the logs, seeing what happened, then going to the playbook and figuring out what was my task, right? It's all here in the Ansible Navigator for you now. So that's what I wanted to show for the run. There is one more thing that I want to show over here is, you know so right now it's using this TUI, right, text-based user interface, but it is possible that you don't want to use that, right? So if I say Ansible Navigator test playbook.yaml hyphen I inventory, if I just press enter here, it is going to take me to the um, TUI, right? I think I missed something. Oh yeah, I didn't give run. So let's give run. So by default, it is going to take me to the TUI. But if I don't want that, what I could do is, there is a mode uh, option, and you can say standard output. So this will be very similar to what Ansible playbook used to give. So if you don't want TUI, you could use this standard output mode. And if I press enter now, this will be the output that you would usually see using Ansible playbook, the play recaps and everything. So there is this, mode option, which is very useful if you don't want to do the TUI part, right? So which is what I wanted to show over here. One more thing, if you remember in the Ansible Navigator settings file, I had this execution environment as true. So all these runs that I was doing was using this execution environment image. If you don't want to use the execution environment image and just run it locally using Ansible playbook, you would just make this value as false, and now it will not use this execution environment at all and will, run locally. All right, so let's for now keep this true. I don't want to make it false for now. So let's go back and let's go back to the Ansible Navigator. So that was run. And now let's talk about replay. So while I was running all these, playbooks, you would see that there were certain artifacts file which were getting created over here. Now, like I mentioned in the start, these are just the output of your playbook. So what you could do using replay is you can replay any of the artifacts that were created earlier. So you don't have to run the playbook again, but you can just replay the whole output if you want to see, or go through certain things in your output. So what I would do is replay, and then you would just give a file name. So let's copy this and let's paste this over here. So if I just say replay and give the artifact file and just press enter, you would see it, it will show you all the output of that from that artifact. So now I can, go to, any of the tasks similarly like I was doing before, and I can, find the details of each of those tasks as well. So it again, it is very easy to replay your previous runs and look at the output, and you can only do that if you have these artifacts file being created. So over here you would say that playbook artifact, settings, by default it's enabled. If I make this false and if I save this, and let's delete all the old artifacts file, um, and now if I run the the Ansible Navigator run command, you will not see artifact file getting created. So let's do that. So Ansible Navigator run test playbook -i and the inventory file, right? Now if I do this, it will of course run the playbook in the TUI mode, since I didn't give the mode as standard output. But if I come out, you will see there was no artifact file getting created because I had disabled it. So you can control whether you want to create those artifact files for future use. Uh, but if uh, uh, but if you don't define this playbook artifact at all in your settings file, by default it will be enabled. So now if I make it true again, and if I run the same command again, um, you should see a artifact file getting created over here. So that is replay. Let's go back into Ansible Navigator and see what else do we have. We already covered the settings in the start, so I'm not going to go that again into that. And then of course there's quit, right? So there are a lot of options within these subcommands as well, which I've not showed over here, but you can of course explore them. There is one more thing which I wanted to show is, no, you don't have to run these Ansible Navigator commands always like this, like going into Ansible Navigator and then colon, doing run and all those. You can in fact, run them directly from here like I was doing, right? So you can just do Ansible Navigator run and then whatever you want to do. So you don't have to do it always via TUI. You can just do it directly as Ansible Navigator binary as well, and run all those different subcommands directly. There are options for each of those subcommands which are exposed as well. So if you just do a help, it will tell you the different options that you have, right? So for example, you can override the execution environment image from the command line itself. So even though you had defined the execution environment over here, you if you want, you can override that. Had you not defined this at all, even then you can override the default execution environment image using this EAI, right? And there are other options available over here which you can see. And each of those other subcommands also have, certain options. So if I just do run help, it will tell me all the options that the, run command has, right? Like the inventory column, the playbook artifact enable, and all those. So that is, you know, Ansible. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show over here. One thing which I didn't cover is Ansible Navigator Builder. So if you remember, or if you have gone through the previous video that we had for Ansible Builder, we used Ansible Builder to create the execution environments. With Ansible Navigator 2.1, I think we added the ability of creating execution environment in the Ansible Navigator itself. So now you don't have to use Ansible Builder to create the execution environments. You can just use Ansible Navigator Builder, and with that you'll be able to create your execution environments from the navigator itself. You don't have to go and create it via builder and then run things using navigator. You can just do it from this one place in navigator. And there is this help builder, which will give you all the you know options available, just like you had in Ansible builder. So you can just do Ansible Navigator builder help builder, and it will open up the Ansible builder help for you. Now what are the different options that you have for the builder command? It will give you that. You can do Ansible Navigator builder create help builder, and it will show you all the options that are there for the create command. So it's pretty much similar to what Ansible builder was. It's just that Ansible Navigator is now since it's a top level interface for all the Ansible dash commands. Ansible builder is also part of it now. So that is Ansible Navigator. I think I covered most of the subcommands that Ansible Navigator had. Um, but like I mentioned, right, each of these subcommands have a lot of other options as well, which I may not have covered over here. But you can always go through the documentation, or you can go through the the help of Ansible Navigator itself, and it will give you a very nice you know whole help or overview. For the docs, what you could do is you can say Ansible Navigator, uh, and it will most probably will take you to the Ansible Navigator read the docs page. Over here you will find a comprehensive documentation about the Ansible Navigator. If you go over here, it will tell you all the subcommands that I was showing over there, right? uh, so it also tells you what was the Ansible dash command, which gets mapped to what Ansible Navigator command, right? So Ansible builder goes to Ansible Navigator builder. Ansible playbook becomes Ansible Navigator run. So go through this documentation. It is very comprehensive in terms of what all you can do using Ansible Navigator. There is a small YouTube video which is probably a 2 minute or 3 minute video, but it just tells you how to use Ansible Navigator. Um, so yeah, That's it. I know that's all I had for Ansible Navigator. I hope this video is useful for you. Now, please share your feedback and see you next time.